So welcome to Krav Life, and I'm Paul Simos, and today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Paul Varacchi. How you doing, sir?
I'm very good, sir. How are you?
Oh, awesome. So where are you reaching us from today?
Right now, I am actually on my way from Bethpage, Long Island to New Jersey, and I am going to throw. I throw axes competitively, so I am on my way to go throw in a competition. Actually, after a nice long day of work.
Oh, that's pretty cool. A little bit of stress relief there.
Without a doubt, if I can't be at the gym teaching Krav Maga, punching things, throwing axes is a great second.
There we go. All right. So let's get a little bit of a background on you first, so that people can kind of get to know you. Did you start in Krav Maga, or do you have like background in another discipline?
I did not start in Krav Maga. I actually my martial arts background started basically when I was a chef. I was a chef for 20 years before but also while I was becoming a martial artist. And I got into a fight outside of the bar one night, and come from a pretty rough background in my house, so I was, pretty much used to taking punches. And one of the waiters there was an ex-sniper, ex-military sniper in the Army. And he saw me fight, and he realized how upset I was. And this guy actually he goes, if you can jog home with me, I will take you to a place and I will teach you martial arts. I will teach you, I'll take you to a school where you can learn MMA. And I was like, okay. But I didn't ask him how far away he lived. So drunk after a fight, he made me run 5 miles, and I wasn't allowed to stop. And he yelled at me the entire way, making sure I didn't stop. And he said, when you feel your legs, I'll take you to a gym. And I went to a gym, and I started teaching, started learning martial arts under a world-class grappler. His name is Riley Bodycomb. And I was at his first gym called Remix Dojo. And basically, because of my background and not really being upset about getting hit, I became an instant sparring partner for everybody who was getting ready for a fight. So if there was a guy getting ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament, I learned that rule set, and I learned jiu-jitsu so I could spar with him. There was someone getting ready for an American kickboxer tournament, I learned that rule set, and I learned how to fight that way so I could spar with him. So all down the line between Sambo, Jiu-Jitsu, Kyokushin Karate, all of those contact combat sports that everybody on this team was training for, I was their sparring partner, so I had to learn how to fight that way. And that was, for years and years and years, that was what I did. And then finally I went to the school that I was at about 15 years ago and just strictly started doing Sambo.
Okay.
And it was very, very late in my career, actually, when I started Krav Maga.
Okay. And how did you come across Krav Maga, and how did you start?
Well, I'm sure every Krav Maga person is going to love to hear me say this. It got to a point of where, one, I realized I was never going to be a professional fighter. I never had that drive. I just kind of liked training. But one thing that I always thought of when I was doing mixed martial arts, I was like, man, if I put somebody in an arm bar in the street, someone's going to walk up to me and step on my face while my hands are occupied. Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't practical. And if I'm not going to be a fighter and make money off of it, I'm really, I was like, I need to find something that makes a little bit more sense for my everyday life, which is, right. So defense kind of seemed to be more of an angle to start looking at. So I was actually watching National Geographic, and the episode of The Human Weapon was on with Itai Gill. And I watched Itai Gill and Haim Gidon and Tanya. They interviewed both of them. And I watched them both, and everything that they had to say about Krav Maga and the principles and what it was based on, I was like, this is what I need to do. And I basically, if you want the story, it's long, but
go for it.
I sought out Itai. Okay. I found a guy in America who had trained and was certified, who was trained and certified under him. And I or was friends with him, not certified. And so I started working contacts that way. And then I was training under this guy for a while. And finally he was like, hey, I'm going to bring Itai here. If you would like to take an instructor's course, you know, sign up. So I signed up for the instructor's course, and Itai came over and he beat the living shit out of me for a week. And I was all my sparring partner, the guy I was doing this full contact week with, his name was Paul Zakowski, and he's a 3-time bare knuckle, you know, Kyokushin karate champion, heavyweight. So he was a very, very big guy, and he hit a hell of a lot harder than I did. So, you know, I got my ass kicked. I snapped my Achilles tendon in the first 20 minutes of the first day, taped up my ankle, went through the rest of the week. Itai told me he wasn't going to be able to certify me because there was just, even though I pushed through, there was just certain things I wasn't going to be able to do with my ankle the way that it was. Mm-hmm. But he saw the way that I taught, and he was like, the way you teach is great. And he goes, and that's what I want. He's like, so work for a year, stay working with James. James Sherman was the guy I was working with. Stay working with James, and in a year, he goes, come to Israel, finish your training, and I'll certify you. So literally a year to the day, my phone rings, and it was Itai, and he goes, are you ready to come to Israel? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you know, and I was training for what they called the box. It's basically an 8x8 box that he puts you in with a, you know, a counter-terror, one of the biggest counter-terror guys on his unit. He gives him a rubber knife and, you know, tells the guy to straight up go to town, and you have to defend yourself. And, you know, so he's like, look, I'll give you your certification. He goes, but you can't use it until you come to Israel. He goes, if you book your flight, I'll send it to you. So I booked my flight. He sent me my certification. I went to Israel for about 2.5 months, and I trained with Chaim Gidon because, again, he's, you know, and the Israeli Krav Maga Association. Those guys are top notch. So I went over there. I trained with Chaim and Igal Arbrev and Noam, his son, and I had a great time with them. And they showed me a lot. And then from there, I went to Netanya and trained in underneath the soccer stadium with Itai in his school, you know, underneath Teddy Stadium. And went there for a week. Another full contact of wonderful, glorious beatings, and walked away with my certificate. And then I opened up a school in New York.
Wow, it's quite the adventure.
Yeah.
So then you opened up your school, and how long has your school been running for?
So my school has been running now for, I would say, about 7 years.
Okay.
And you know, it took a big, you know, it took a hit for COVID. You know, so did the gym. We obviously had to close down. Luckily, you know, Steve, my partner, is an extremely smart guy and got everything that he needed to get to keep the gym open. And you know, now we're starting up again. We're starting to do classes. I got a security team that I'm training on Sundays. So, you know, it's good. We're getting back to it.
Awesome. So you trained in Sambo, right?
Yes.
And you have Krav Maga, and those two arts kind of get compared pretty often, right? Like Sambo is considered like Russian Krav Maga. How do you find the similarities or differences?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. If you watch combat Sambo, not sports Sambo, if you watch combat Sambo matches, it's the closest thing you can see to actually watching Krav Maga in a sport fashion. These guys headbutt each other. I mean, they go to town. They do all the throws. They do everything. And they have the jackets. So you get to see, you know, that grip control and those things that actually happen when people grab you in the street, and what these big throw and really manhandle another guy is what you see in Sambo. And there's no other sport where you'll just see a guy with another guy grappling, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, one guy will be like, oh yeah, I can headbutt. Whang! Fight's over. You can't watch that. You can't see that anywhere. Sambo, it's allowed. And when it comes to the military version of Sambo, it's even more. And Sambo is the same way. It's not about It's about ending it quickly, and that's why there's, you know, in combat sambo, you have something called total victory, which is where if I throw you and I land on my feet and I'm on my feet and you're on the ground, that's it, it's over. So, and in a real fight, if you put someone on the ground and you're on your feet, you're most likely going to be the guy who wins that fight.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah. The Russians are crazy.
And the control in the close quarters combat, the control, the grips, the throw, all of those things are so applicable when it comes to Krav Maga, because Krav Maga is nose to nose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I'm not nose to nose, I'm walking away. I'm de-escalating. When Krav Maga, you know, is the one thing that I always tell somebody is that if you go to a Krav Maga school and your instructor teaches you to take a fighting stance before you defend yourself, it's doing you disservice. Because by the time you take that stance, the fight's already over. You've lost.
Yeah, exactly. So why exactly did you switch from sambo to Krav Maga then?
Again, they're very similar in my opinion. When you take the sport out of sports sambo and you just start going into the holds and the close quarters, you know, even their knife techniques, even their gun stuff, it's all very, very similar. And there were just a lot of like small things that traditional Krav and traditional sambo kind of, you know, that they teach, but in a perspective of self-defense and taking your ego out of it and trying to find the flaws in your system to make it flawless instead of ignoring changes and just teaching the same system and beating a dead horse. You know, if you're, you know, sambo, my coach, you know, we're always finding, you know, he's always finding better ways to do things. Every lesson could be the same throw, but it'll be a little bit different. There's always a trick, and a lot of times, a lot of these Krav Maga schools, they get caught into this military, the block and strike, you know, and you know, for me, block and strike doesn't work in real life because you know, I have a big thing behind it. But you know, and I do cover and charge, and Sambo teaches cover and charge, and to me, it just makes sense. Because, like, I mean, do you mind if I go on a little?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, so traditional Krav Maga, one of the first things you learn is offense, defense simultaneously. It's one of the things that Krav Maga prides itself on. But if the first thing that you learn how to do, right, is block and strike, you're bringing your hands away from the one place you should be protected, which is your face. Why? Because you are now learning a technique that, in my opinion, is based on ego. Because the only way a block and strike will ever work is if you are 100% ready to get your hands up and away from your face and get that guy's strike before it starts. But that's not how self-defense works. That's a fight. Self-defense starts from a punch you normally don't expect. And when you react from that punch, you have to base your defense on what that natural reaction of everybody is going to be, and then progress from there. Because when anybody, if someone's gonna, now it comes to a point where people flinch and be like, it's not like I have this special, I don't do anything because it doesn't freak me out. But when you flinch at people, the first thing they do is they squint their eyes and they bring their shoulders up, right? And they bring their head up high, head back, and then. So the first thing that I teach my students to do is, what's the one place he's trying to get? Your CPU, your central processing unit. He wants to shut you down. Well, you need to cover that. So cover that and burst in. That is essentially the same as a block and strike. Because what I would teach my students to do is I was like, if you block and strike, you better be able to touch your forehead with your palms first. Because if you can't, you're going to get punched in the face. Because when you throw that block and strike out, your hands are going to go to where you saw that punch coming from. And by the time your hands get out there, his punch is going to be in your face already. So I have found that block and strike does not work if you are not ready for it.
Right. Right. Yeah, a couple people have mentioned that the block and strike is not always ideal. Um, so you like the cover and strike, and what
Oh,
other?
cover first. There's no strike. There's no strike. You really just charge in with the
Cover and
elbow.
charge. Sorry,
And
cover and charge.
the reason for doing that is normally you charge in nice and tight with the elbows, and you charge right into their center. And a good firm burst. Their hands are going to come open because once you're covered inside on their center, your forearms are going to be laid against their chest. So all you do is turn your hands around, and their face is right there. And then once you have contact with the face, again, I really don't show punching because once I make contact with the face, I like to hold on to. I don't like to let it go, and I like to squeeze my hands and what I like to call squish the grapefruit, and just make my fingers meet behind all the holes in the face. And people let out all kinds of horrible screams when that happens.
Yeah, people tend.
Again, my class isn't really based on a lot of kicking and punching because I don't have the time. You want to take 2 years to train every single day to be able to instinctively just punch immediately? There's so much training involved in doing that to not break your hands that most students, all of a sudden, it comes to a point of where when they start, they're not learning how to defend themselves, they're learning how to fight. And that is going to get kicked up the street.
Yeah. We definitely want to avoid fighting at all costs because you could be winning most of the fight and then lose it in the last second. So what other parts of Krav Maga philosophy do you really want your students to really grasp, or what are some other philosophies that you want your students to grasp?
I'm a big fan of you ever take a weapon from a standing opponent. So a lot of the things you see, also I'm about like a lot of the times you'll see knife defense, and one hand will reach out and grab the wrist, and the other hand will strike. It'll never work. Maybe if you're like Nir Maman and you're 7 foot tall and you have a hand that's huge that can wrap around someone's. Do you know what I mean? If I was near, I'd be able to grab some guy's wrist. Right. But I'm not. So I have to find a type of control that works for me. So, we start working on wraps and basically like Russian ties and 2-on-1s when we do knife defenses. And if you have the energy to stand, chances are you're not going to let me take a knife from you. So there's not going to be some type of immediate fast joint manipulation I can do because you're strong, you're tracking, your muscles are ready. All of this joint stuff and the blocking of the hand, it doesn't work when someone's being active and tries to stab you 7 times in 2 seconds. To get control of that arm. And the only way I can get control of something that you are focusing 100% energy on is if I am focusing 100% energy on controlling that, which means I can't hit you. I can't knee you. I can't do any of those things because the second that goes to happen, your 100% strength is going to outweigh my now 65% strength because I want to knee you 45%. You're never going to hold on to a weapon. So my philosophy is you do not take a weapon or a knife. Guns are a little bit different, obviously. You do not take a knife from an opponent while he's still standing. You put him on the ground, you beat the bag out of him on the ground, and then you take the knife from him. But unless, you know what I mean? So control when you have a knife. It is the most important thing. The second you lose that control, you can die in an instant in a knife fight. One stab, one slice. When I was in Israel, they always said that in a knife fight, the winner is the guy who dies in the hospital, not on the street. Because both guys are probably going to get cut. But grabbing an active weapon and trying to grab an active weapon with your hands, you know what I mean? Like if you were moving your arm like this, just like this, and I was standing in front of you trying to grab it, I would have a hard time. Now imagine that with brutality, force, and a weapon going towards my midsection. You really think I'm going to be able to grab it with my hand?
No, yeah, and yeah, a lot of these, I don't know, the finer techniques like wrist locks and stuff like that, they're very hard to pull off when, especially under stress, which is why like
Very
gross.
precise.
Sorry.
I said they're very precise movements. They're very
Yeah.
precise things, and if they don't happen in a certain way, the guy's just going to pull his hand away from it.
Yeah, exactly, and they're really hard to pull off under stress, right? Because at that point in a real situation, you only have gross motor skills, and it's really hard to access those fine motor skills.
One of the other things I tell my students is that if you have to think about it, it's too late. Just give it up.
Yeah.
You have to think about it before you do it. You don't know well enough. Don't do it. Give it up. De-escalate. That's what you do in the beginning. You learn how to de-escalate. You learn how to walk away in the quickest way possible. And if you have to stay, that's fine. But the first thing all of my students should learn is that fights are no joke. Time doesn't slow down. And chances are, if they've never been in a fight before and they're fighting a guy who has, second they get punched in the face, everything's going to go to shit and they're going to lose. Bad.
Yeah. So do you ever address de-escalation in your class?
Absolutely. It's usually one of the first things I do. I always address de-escalation. I always talk about, when somebody shoves you, when they push you. I always talk about when things start like that. I was like, dude, if somebody pushes me, I was like, they're literally pushing me in the direction I want to go, away from them. Turn around, take the energy, walk away. That's it. Done. Turn around, take the energy, walk away. If the guy was going to follow up with a punch, you wouldn't have gotten that far away from the push. So if it starts like that, if somebody puts their hands on me, I don't like to put my hands out towards people like this, because if they have a weapon, I feel you're exposing vital arteries in your wrists. Whenever I feel I am going to come into an altercation, I turn my hands into my chest. I put my palms flat. I bring my shoulders up a little bit. So that way, the first thing they're going to do is try and get to my head. I am immediately ready to cover my CPU so I can process and think through what's happening. And so, I don't, again, another thing that I tell my students is that you don't put your hands out towards people. You don't want to give someone a distance check. You're letting that guy know if he's in range to hit you if you do that. I know, you should know when you can kick somebody. You should know when you should punch somebody. Doing this gives them a distance check. It actually puts you in more of a fight because you're bringing your hands up and you're saying, hey, I don't like to do that. I will back off and I will say, please do not come near me. And you do not get a hand push if you come near me. You get a strike. And that's it. So there's no hands-on warnings. I do not teach them.
So it's kind of like try to de-escalate, but then if it's when it's go time, then you're already full aggression.
De-escalation. I mean, me going like this can sometimes upset people. Me turning my palms into my chest and keeping everything close to me is non-threatening to him, and it's safer for me. Putting your hands in people's face can get them agitated. You put your hand up, tell someone to calm down, they use their hand, they swat it away. I don't want him touching me for any reason. And if he does, I'm ending it.
Right. Okay. And so you mentioned that you teach, you have like a security group that you teach.
Yeah, I work in TV and film production, and this is actually a really funny story. The AD, the assistant director, was a very good friend of mine, and the security team that goes in at night was actually talking to the AD, and he goes, I really wish I knew a place where I could learn Sambo and Krav Maga. Excuse me. And the AD was like, you're joking, right? He's like, I can't believe you just said that to me. And he pointed him out to me, and I'm 5'8", I'm 170 pounds. I am not like a threatening looking guy. And they're like, him? And they was like, yeah. And I started talking to the guys, and once a couple of guys were military, they knew who Itai was. They knew a few people I trained with were, and they were like, oh, okay, we'll give you a whirl, And it was it's a great group. It's about 250 plus big black guys, just nightclub security. And I mean, and these guys like to work. They like to get dirty. They hit hard. I mean, it's a good class. And I kind of wanted to start it and have it be a public class. And then I was like, no, I need to keep this private. And these guys, they get hit hard, and they hit hard, and they train hard, and it's good. Like it was a really, really good first class. I was glad to get back to keep teaching, because it was just very, very intense, and I really didn't realize how much I was missing training with guys what we would say in the sport, who like to bang, and it's good because also, if you want to get good at Krav Maga, you got to get good at getting hurt,
right? Not
injured. No one should get good at getting injured, but you should get good at getting hurt and being able to move through it, walk through it, and have things not happen your way, and understand how to not panic and analytically think through situations. And one of the things that I do to work with that in my class is, if you take a Muay Thai pad and you turn it around and you grab it by the handle, you can whack people with it. Okay. So again, the thought process is very, very important when it comes to self-defense. If you're not thinking about what's going on, then you're not really doing anything. You're just sitting there letting it happen. So I will have one guy will stand in the middle, and I will have everybody stand around with a pad or something soft but hard, to wrap them with. Mm-hmm. And what I'll do is everyone will stand in a circle, and I will start, I'll just say go, and all this person is allowed to do is cover. And everyone is just allowed to go to town and wail on him. And then I make him say his alphabet out loud, clearly, and he cannot break his rhythm. And if he does, he has to start over, and he's not allowed out of the circle until the alphabet is done. Because I want people to be able to think while bad things are happening. And that's the safest way I have found to do it. Just crap out of people with a bunch of heavy pads.
Nice.
And it works, and then sometimes I'll change the drills. It's really weird, but having someone say their phone number is actually one of the toughest, because there's a set rhythm to it. When someone catches you and you mess that rhythm up, and make them start again, and they have to keep doing it, and they have to think, and there's lots of yelling, and there's lots of screaming, like as many distractions as we can give you to just keep you thinking and keeping that cover up and keeping you safe while it's happening until you can gain that proper thought process to do what it is you need to do. You're going to have to keep yourself safe, because no one is going to want to stop attacking you until you make them stop attacking you. So It doesn't matter how good my defense is. He's just going to want to hit me more if I'm not making him wanting to stop.
That's an interesting drill. So I like that drill, actually. I might experiment with that one. So the security team, right, or the security guards, I imagine that the de-escalation skills are probably even more important for them.
Yes, with those guys, the de-escalation skills are very prominent, but also I teach them a lot of dirty stuff, because they have to be able to do things that if someone is filming, you can't see. So I teach them a lot of in-close things. I teach them a lot of dirty things throat grabs, how to pull. There's things I teach. I go, people are going to have out cameras. Strikes that that most people wouldn't notice when they're watching. How to, striking with the inside of the forearm, striking with the bicep, striking with the shoulder. Things that happen in close that guys that size could ring someone's bell with. And, it's a lot of that 3-inch punch philosophy and how to generate that power very, very close. I also teach these guys that there should never be a point when they're working as a group that they should be handling the situation alone. So I teach them how, when they're dealing with aggressors, how, one guy deal with the legs and one guy takes the high road. One guy takes the high road, one guy takes the low road. The easiest way to deal with somebody. A lot of the times, I watch police in training that go to deal with people. You got 6 guys working on the guy's arms, but no one's taking his legs. I mean, in jail, any jailhouse fight you see, when 2 guys are going to take, one guy just grabs another guy's legs, lays on his legs, and everybody else just kicks the crap out of him. So, there's a reason they fight that way, because that's what works. So I always tell them, I go, you have a problem with a guy at a club, and he goes and he hits one of your bouncers. The other guy immediately goes and takes his legs. Right. And brings him to the ground, and the other guy just stays dealing with the cop. You guys hold him down. Don't stand him up. Don't try and walk him out of the club. Hold him there. Call 911. Let the cops stand him up and cuff him.
Right. So it's a lot of.
You're not cops. This isn't the movies. You're not grabbing a guy by the back of his head and the ass of his pants and throwing him out on the street. The second you stand him up, you're going to have another problem.
But that would be fun, though.
Yeah, it would. Especially those guys, because they could do it.
Yeah. So for them, it's more. It's not just learning how to handle people and the de-escalation. It's also teamwork. Then.
Teamwork is huge for a security team, especially when they're doing nightclubs and they're doing things like that, because you have to be watching the other security guys' backs, because those people there have friends, and their friends are drunk and dirty and don't give a shit. They'll hit you in the back of the head with a bottle. They'll punch a guy in the back of the head who's dealing with his buddy who won't let him in the club. They have to be heads on a swivel and for your partner. So if his partner is dealing with something, I don't find it's a great idea to make his presence openly known to everybody there. Sometimes it's a good idea to have a guy kind of standing a little bit back and who's about 2 steps away from anything going down in case something happens. The more security you get there, the more agitated people are going to get. So everybody needs to, again, de-escalation isn't always about intimidation. And sometimes security guards work too much on intimidation, and they end up just making the situation worse.
Right. It's very interesting. So what is your Krav Maga future, so to speak? What sort of directions do you want to take your personal training and your studio?
I mean, right now, obviously I'd like to, I'd like to get rid of the other full-time job and just go back to teaching full-time. But I would kind of like, I guess, nobody wants to, you want to run your own school and have people open, but, I never really wanted to be the best Krav Maga instructor or whatever, but I always I enjoy being that guy, like, hey, I need a good school. And then, they'll be like, I know a guy. Like, there's this guy who does this, and he does real stuff. The stuff he does is practical. He doesn't teach you bullshit. There's no magic. He's straightforward with you. I just want to be, I guess, known as, when you come up in a world of where guys that you train with, like Steve, and they're really involved with like Bullshido and all those investigations, you never want to be one of those guys that ends up on one of those investigations as a fucking scam artist. So I guess the pride in what I teach and keeping that, and really keeping the evolution of Krav Maga growing, and letting people know that Krav Maga isn't just this one system that someone developed in 1947 and no one is growing them up. Because there's a lot of Krav Maga that people, that's what they think it is. And then I'll sit down and I'll talk with them for 5 minutes and they'll be like, wow. And then you have other guys that are purists. They're like, what you do isn't Krav Maga. It's dangerous. And I'm like, well, whatever, man. Get over it. You know, sorry I don't bow down to your instructor and do what you guys do. But, you know, that's why I started training with Etan, because he's not that guy.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you for taking time out to talk to us. This has been a very interesting conversation, and hopefully we can do it again at some point in time.
Yeah, man, for sure.
All right. So if anyone wants to come out and train with you, where exactly is your studio?
Yeah, you can reach me at New York Combat Sambo. It's on 36th Street, between 225 36th Street, between 7th and 8th in Manhattan.
Perfect. Well, we'll also post up all your information, and we'll make sure that your studio is on our Krav Maga directory, the Krav Life directory at mykravlife.com, and it's going to be one of the largest Krav Maga directories in the world. So,
and thank you so much for reaching out to me, man. It was an honor to do an interview with you, man. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you.
Not a problem. It's been fun. All right. So thank you for joining us on Krav Life, and we will check you out later.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.